How does product innovation really work? This episode is a masterclass in the art and science of product innovation with two masters of the craft, a father and son duo who together hold over 230 patents and have shaped products that you likely use every day. Innovation isn't a buzzword for our guests, it's the family business spanning 3 generations. For product managers feeling that constant pressure to create the next big thing while managing stakeholders, resources, and market realities, you'll learn how creative ideas become commercial successes. Our guests are Walter and Scot Herbst of Herbst Product Design Firm. They bring an extraordinary perspective to product innovation. Dr. Walter Herbst, recognized by Business Week as one of the fathers of product design, founded his first design consultancy in 1962 and later created Northwestern University's prestigious Master of Product Design and Development Management program. His son Scot now leads their Silicon Valley design firm, partnering with Fortune 100 companies and breakthrough startups alike on award-winning products across healthcare, consumer tech, and more. We're about to learn practical wisdom earned through 60 years of successful product development, insights that can make the difference between your next product success or failure. And if you're listening to us and you'd rather watch the video version, simply go to our YouTube channel, search for Product Mastery Now on YouTube. Let's jump in and learn about product innovation right after this.
How can you unlock your full potential as a product manager? We're sharing the product management insights you need. They are based on the 7 research-backed knowledge areas for product mastery. You'll learn to create products customers love, enhance your influence, and elevate your career. Welcome to Product Mastery Now, hosted by Dr. Chad McAllister, product management professor, practitioner, and your guide.
Walter and Scot, thank you so much for joining us.
It's a joy to be here. Really, thanks so much, Chad, for having us. Appreciate it.
Yeah, really excited. Thanks, Chad.
And I'm excited to hear about your guys' experience and the resources you have. We'll get into all that. But first, I thought we could start with maybe you each picking one of your favorite product design projects that you've been a part of and tell us what that was. It doesn't have to be the very favorite. I realize that's very hard. But one of the ones that stand out to you. Walter, you want to kick us off?
Sure. Yeah. I think one of my favorites is based on the absurd request we received from a company called Smith & Nephew. And Smith & Nephew is a medical manufacturing type company, and they make all sorts of tools for multiple procedures. And I will admit it's probably the weirdest thing I've ever come across in terms of a potential client, because they came to us and they just threw out a really simple question. And they said, do you guys have any idea how we could sell more knees? Because they make knees. And you sort of knee-jerk the ridiculous answers, and you say dumb things like, yeah, lower the cost, or get a baseball bat and break more knees, or do so,
More customers.
Yeah, more customers. But we thought, boy, that's just a fascinating request. That would normally go to one of those big 3 consulting type studios, and they would spend the rest of their lives figuring it out with lots of money. And we didn't know anything about knees, to be perfectly honest. So we said, well, why don't we first find out what it's all about? And that just started a wondrous journey into a remarkable solution. But that would have been one of the certainly most fascinating projects that walked in the door with that as a starting point that we've ever come across.
I'm curious, did that result in a change to the product to be able to sell more knees, or more of a change in positioning?
The answer is neither. Now, that's really a strange thing to say, because from a technical point of view, there's really only one great way to make a knee. But when we got into surgery, if you will, and watching the operation, we recognized 2 things. And one was the fact that on very rare occasion, but it happened, the surgeon would drop the freaking tool. It's a slippery environment. It's loaded with saline solution, and it's not bloody, but it's just slippery. And then you'd look at the anesthesiologist, and that person would be, oh, Lord, I have to keep this person near dead now for another 9 minutes while they clean the tool. And so that's kind of, that definitely started the answer to the solution, because we then found out that when you, the surgeon, order a knee, the knee manufacturer ships in the knee tools. And we never could have guessed that. We thought the hospitals had all the tools, but every knee manufacturer, if you will, has their own very specific set of tools. And when we looked at the tools that got shipped in with the knee, I swear you could have gone down to the Ace Hardware store and bought the tools. They were just ridiculous tools. I mean, you could get the job done, but when you start dealing with the surgeons, and these are orthopods, and they rise to another level altogether, and they just didn't do the job well enough. I mean, you could replace the knee, you could do all of that with a lot of skill, but they were slippery. They were at best below average from a design ergonomic point of view. And that got us to the solution, which was a better set of tools.
Yep.
That
Improve
were
the
easily,
experience overall.
I talk about it a bit in my latest book, Mastering Product Innovation, where you could actually see all of those images, but they were easy to find for the supporting staff that had to grab the right tool out of the right chest of tools, if you will. And as I noted, boy, non-slippery, lighter weight,
Yep.
more appropriate for the level of professionalism of the orthopod. And so the obvious happened. They just started selling more knees because the orthopods wanted those sets of tools.
Love that. Great example. Thanks, Walter. Scott, what's been one of your favorite projects?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's, as you mentioned, it's tough to pick one, but I will say one program that really stands out to me and Walter is actually our longest running collaboration to date. And we still continue to work with a company here in Silicon Valley by the name of Slice. And Slice is a really interesting story, actually. We've been working with them. I think this year we're celebrating our 15th anniversary with them. And
for people watching the video, isn't there a Slice product behind you?
yeah, there is. Good eye. It's actually on the cover of Walter's first book, No Excuses Innovation. And this was, believe it or not, this was our very first introductory product with Slice, a box cutter, a complete reinterpretation of the standard steel-bladed box cutter. But in our case, we developed the entire platform of products around their proprietary ceramic blade technology. And this dates back to 2008. But they approached us with a very interesting proposition, which was they were wanting to grow this new brand, build a portfolio of product around this really interesting ceramic bladed technology. And the first instinct that everybody had was to develop a line of products for the home. So that would be everything from kitchen knives to ceramic pepper grinders and graters and all manner of kitchen cutlery and some just kind of home DIY cutting tools. And anyway, we developed a few products, and that year, that was, I think 2008, we went to the Houseware show in Chicago, and we had a big booth and a line of introductory products. And I think all of us sort of were taken aback at just the sea of new innovative products that were available at this is the world's largest trade show relating to home goods. And it kind of gave us pause. How do we really establish a footprint in this space with a new young brand? And obviously we have really innovative tools, but it just became evident very quickly that it's a very crowded space and it's tough to sort of distinguish yourself. So interesting, in that moment, we had a little bit of a retrospective revisiting of our initial charter. And one of the interesting things we had noted was that with this initial product that I'm holding in my hand, this ceramic bladed box cutter, we had a remarkably warm reception in the commercial and enterprise space. We had a bunch of big customers at the time. Amazon started using our cutting tools in their distribution warehouse. and there were a couple other large, I think Boeing was using the tool. So we thought this is kind of interesting. We're actually getting pretty decent recognition in the commercial space. And while it's not maybe the sexiest market to go after, it certainly seems like a big opportunity that hasn't been met. Really well designed, safer cutting tools. And so at that moment, we sort of made this pivot away from the sort of conventional path towards consumer work and down this new sort of unconventional direction towards the more commercial side of the spectrum. So that was a pivotal defining moment for the brand, because here we are 15 years later, and now Slice has been acquired by the largest safety cutting conglomerate in the world. We have over 70 products that we've designed for them in the portfolio. They're doing terrific. And I don't know, I think to me, it's just a great illustration of how important it is and how valuable it is in the design process to keep an open mind and to be able to take a step back and with a really healthy mindset, reevaluate your pre-existing assumptions. Because of course, in the product development world and in innovation, that's one of the hardest things to do, isn't it? It's you have a strong conviction, you're passionate about your idea. Your company has a formal charter to develop this initiative, and it can be hard to put pause on that and reevaluate the aspects of the design process. So I think that to me has always stood in the back of my mind as a reminder that success really comes from having an open mind.
Yeah, I love that. I'm going to add that to my library of pivot stories, because so often when we're trying to create a new product or improve a product, we learn something, right, about the market, the problem, or our solution, and we have to pivot to something that will work. And that's a really good example. And wow, 70 products designed for Slice, that's a great portfolio as a design organization to be a part of. Thanks for sharing the example with us. Now, my next question is kind of the heart of what I want to talk about together. And I know we're not going to do this full justice in the time we have. And thankfully, listeners can go read your book, Walter, with more details, but would love to hear how you have evolved through all the years of creating products for organizations. Where are you now in your product innovation process, right? If you can take us kind of through the big steps, maybe a framework you use, tools you use, that would be super helpful for us to hear. Where do you start? What is a typical starting sort of place?
Yeah, so let me start with that one, Chad, and then because obviously I've been at it longer than Scott has. But I think what's important for all of us to appreciate and understand is adherence to a methodology. And early on in our career, my career, before Scott and I obviously got together for Herbst product, what I never wanted to be, nor did I ever want my prior organization to be, was just a bunch of folks that were stylists, if you will. I mean, all of us have the same background in industrial design, and all of us have an aesthetic sense, and some of us have an ergonomic sense. But I found out early on with my competitors that none of them had an absolute driven methodology that was proven and they could rely on it to assure the client. This is a crazy thing to say, that you will be successful. I mean, going back a million years, it sounds so nuts in today's world, but maybe it doesn't. We actually guaranteed, this is crazy, we guaranteed you will be successful in the marketplace. We'll give you your money back if you're not. I mean, who the heck says that when you're creating something new to the world, or at least new to the company? And we did it, and we branded ourselves that way. And we certainly adhere to the reality that we're not going to release anything to you, irrespective of your own personal biases, if we don't know that it's going to be successful in the marketplace. So it's all based on methodology.
Very good. And so methodology is something you follow, you adhere to,
We
follow
do.
the steps.
Yeah. I mean, we may write it. Scott's writing all of the proposals now, if you will, and maybe his writing style is different than my writing style, but the methodology is there.
It's still the same
it
steps.
starts out with a phase 0, if you will, and just keeps marching along. And I'll let Scott talk his way through that one.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, Scott, you want to take us through the phases?
And it's really interesting in preparing for this discussion with you. We did indeed think a lot about how over these decades of design, how design has changed, how the landscape has evolved, and it certainly has. It's really interesting, to Walter's point, the fundamentals of our process really haven't changed much over the years. I think Walter established initially sort of the core components of our design approach, which is a phased program that begins with a really kind of open discovery and definition phase to a project, where we're thinking very strategically about understanding all the variables at the front end of the process and defining the problem that we're solving, and then getting into a subsequent concept development phase where we kind of take, again, a broad lens and look at a whole wide spectrum of solutions to the problem. And then that's followed by a refinement phase where we sort of filter down to a best guess series of design assumptions and so on and so forth, until we get down to the final sort of design that everyone has high confidence in. And that process, which is typically 3 or 4 phases, it hasn't really changed to my knowledge. I mean, Walter, you can correct me, but from my memory, even going back to the 80s, I mean, that was the process that you always deployed. And it's certainly the process that we still rely on today. So it's really interesting to see how robust that philosophy has been throughout the years.
Hey, I'll just add to that a bit, Chadwick. I suspect most everybody has a process. I mean, that's just a given. There's an issue in the reality of receiving the project, if you will, from the design innovation point of view. And as Scott says, just how do you interpret that and what do you do with it? What we found over the years, and it sometimes comes from the marketing side of our partner company, if you will, or sometimes comes from the engineering side of the partner company. And it is not even a bit unusual when they say, okay, here's what you need to do. Here's what we have, here's what you need to do. And so it comes back to you're sort of filling in the lines. And as Scott said, when we start out at the very beginning, just trying to understand what the real problem is, as he pointed out with the slice issue, I mean, you first need to understand what is the basics. So when all of the folks out there that say, but we have a process, so let's get on with this talk because we already have one. One of the things I'm willing to say with certainty is, while you can initially identify and then do a little bit of research and then start doing it and developing it and building your alphas, if you will, and then running into production, I'm willing to suggest that not enough work is ever done on the back end when you're looking at all of the microsegmentation of the end users to fully appreciate which one of those potential solutions is really the right solutions.
Right.
Because there's no one solution. I mean, gosh, we've learned that a long time ago. There is never any one solution. But the market will tell us that. And because everybody is in such a rush to get to market, we got to make the next show, they forget about that final confirmation. And that's why I say with surety, when we turn a project over, we know darn going to be successful. I mean, there's no doubt. Of course it's going to be successful.
That's what certainly product people want, right? To end up a place that you know it's going to be successful before you get into the market. And that's really exciting about your framework. There's 2 aspects of those 4 phases, Scott, that you described that I want to dive into. And Walter, you already started on the first one, which is getting the problem understood properly. What are the variables involved? Let's add the strategic thinking and not just the tactical build the solution for sort of thing. This is the place where I personally see most room for improvement in organizations. Is there's a rush to embrace the problem as described and move on to solution instead of clearly understanding what the problem actually is. How do you guys go about that? Are there some tools that you like to use their frameworks, just different ways of thinking? How do you make sure you know what the problem is?
It's a great question. There's sort of to simplify things, there's two camps of engagements that we tend to see. In the first camp, an organization will come to us well equipped with data and insights that they have harvested on their end, whether it's through their own internal research organization or if they've had an opportunity to work with another agency that has helped them sort of develop a roadmap. That's sort of the first camp, and we can certainly inherit that information and work with it in our process. And then the second camp is a little bit more open-ended, where an entrepreneur or an endeavor will come to us without really having had a formal opportunity to define the program inputs. And they rely on us to kind of help with what we refer to as discovery and definition. And in that process, we have a framework in place to kind of help elicit all of the information that we would at least need to get started on the design side, all the user insights, the consumer landscape, the brand inputs. That's another important aspect to today's product development cycle, is understanding how do we take your brand attributes and really use product design to amplify them and make it a really compelling, emotionally engaging product solution. So I think that's all kind of inherent in our discovery and definition phase at the onset of a program. And all of that is really essential so that we can then enter our formal design phase with good data and good insights that we can design against. I think every program is consistent in that manner. It may be that a partner comes to us well equipped with data, and it may be that they don't have much and that we have to kind of help unearth it, and that's okay. I think the point is that we just set everyone up for success as we head into the formal design phases in a manner that gives us something to design against, right? Because as Walter said, the worst thing you can do is put everyone's sort of personal subjectivity into the mix and just say, well, what do you think of this idea? Well, how do you feel about that solution? And I think for us, the design process is much more empirical in that we really look to rely on a data-driven process to evaluate the merits of different solutions, right? So that you can say, okay, is this meeting the basic criteria that we've established for success? And that success isn't necessarily my personal subjectivity and my design sensibilities. It's more, who are we designing for and what problems are we trying to solve, and how can we check all those boxes with these concepts? So that's a kind of a long-winded way of saying we're able to work with organizations that have the formal capacity to develop those insights, and we're also able to kind of manage that process as well. So
yeah, and the key thing there is developing that criteria for success. And I imagine going into this, you're doing some market segmentation sort of work to understand the different customer groups. You're probably doing ethnography or interviews or other kind of customer research to really understand different perspectives on what that problem is. Is that true?
yeah, in fact, yes, exactly. That's really well put. And I think there are a number of manners with which we can gain insight into consumer usage and ethnography, as you mentioned. And one of the interesting stories, this goes back to Walter and myself, kind of our careers overlapping together. Walter did the very first toilet wand designed for Clorox, which has since become one of their sort of shining success stories within the organization. And it goes back to the late 90s, where they came to him with this effectively an idea for how they could create a consumable stream within the toilet cleaning space. And Walter and his team developed the toilet wand, which I think everyone's fairly familiar with. It's sort of a long-handled toilet scrubber that has this consumable scrub head on the end, and it's been a remarkable success for Clorox. And what's funny is that here we are 25 years later, and we actually are still working on that program, helping evolve it, refine next generation iterations of the product. And we were just at Clorox a week or two ago in what they refer to as the throne room, which is it's a consumer touch point sort of ethnographic setup where they have a whole series of toilets, and people come in and they watch the cleaning habits, they watch the human interaction of what it takes to clean a typical toilet, what's the duration of time, how do they interact with the product, how can we improve it, what feedback do they have. So it gets quite interesting. The products that we touch and the innovations that we're able to sort of help steer based on some of that early insight and ethnographic work is pretty interesting.
That's fantastic. I just kudos to Clorox for naming their user observation room, throne room. I love that. That's very helpful, Scott. Walter, what did you want to add on this problem understanding aspect?
I know we're different, at least I'm sure we're different, in that we set these in stone, if you will, early on. One of the things we like to do, and I cover this, whatever we're talking about, it sounds like a commercial, I don't really mean it, but we outline it in my latest book on mastering product innovation. And what we do all the time is we define what it is and what it is not. And we post that in the office. So it's always in front of you. And you don't start straying from that, because we now understand who that end user is, what the price points are, what the variables are, what that category means to that end user. And while Scott may be talking about reasonably esoteric, if you will, toilet wand, you still have to make sure it's connecting to who that end user really is. And so you want to get into that, what it is and what it is not, really early. And you want that as basic internal messaging for everybody to understand. And it sounds like, oh, well, what's the big deal on that? Well, I can tell you, it takes a bit of time to get to that subject, to that finished piece of documentation that we post on the wall.
As an example, for the toilet wand, the things I'm thinking of just as a user, right, of such things, for my want list, what it could be, less time, less effort, shinier results, something like that, right? Is that the kind of thing you're getting to? I'm sure there's a whole lot more there, but.
Yeah, let me take it to just a general example. So when we do the ethnographic studies, whether they're in the setting that the product is set up by our customer, if you will, or if it's in your personal setting. I think one of the things that's fascinating is you'll talk to people about the process. I don't care what the process is. I don't care if you're cleaning your toilets or vacuuming your carpeting. That doesn't really matter. And they'll be using the product and talking to you about, no, there's no problem at all. This is just great. I just love it. While they're talking, you start looking at them and you're realizing, oh my Lord, you're twisting and they're turning and they're bending over and they're doing all sorts of things. And so that's what comes in with what it is and what it is not, or what in terms of how you could finally start delineating where the direction that you have to be taking on this thing.
Yep.
So
I appreciate that. Ethnography happens to be my personal favorite research approach, and I resonate well with what people say is not necessarily the same as what they show and do. So.
They always want to make you feel good. Oh, no, this is fine. This is great.
That's very good. I did want to dive in briefly into the second main question I had for you on this process, which comes to the development phase of multiple solutions. How do you go about helping yourselves and those involved in a project to pursue multiple solutions? Because it's so easy to get fixated early on a path and you bias yourself from other things. So how do you help bringing multiple solutions to this to evaluate?
I'm going to just do an overview, and then I'm going to let Scott get into detail. One of the things that we find to be reasonably consistent is the reality that the way we work, we will always come out with multiple solutions. We will then always do a preliminary, because we stay really tight with our counterpart who we're responsible to deliver success to. We always got to I'm making it up. I love the pink one. It's perfect. And our answer is sort of a snotty answer. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. We need to go out and find the answer. And of course, some of that is regional, right? I mean, it's what happens in California doesn't happen in Maine necessarily.
Sure.
So we stay really strong to our own adherence of making sure we get to the voice of the customer. Irrespective of, I know you're paying us, I know you want to get to market right now, I know you need a release, and we stand by our methodology. Scott, you want to?
I mean, I think that's well put. It's tough because as robust as our process is, you also need buy-in organizationally with your partner. And they have to be set up in a manner that also celebrates the sort of parallel path of evaluating, I think, multiple solutions simultaneously before making a sort of summary judgment on which direction to commit to. And our process is really good at helping sort of shepherd that along. But I think culturally, it's also really important that an organization really embraces that lack of early definition. And it can be a bit scary because, as we all know, there's real resources and money and schedule on the line. And I think the tendency naturally for humans is just to use your instincts to commit to a path and just make it happen. And that's not necessarily a bad trait. It's just that you have to really be careful to balance that with the reality that, as Walter said, you've got to have good data supporting your decision. And so I think the process, again, that's the framework that everyone can rely on to appreciate what are the options, how can we evaluate the merits of the different directions, how can we bring in insights from our user group or from external voices to really bring some reality to the lens of how we're going to make this decision. So yeah, I mean, there's only so much we can control, and I think we do our best to really just ensure that our partners are comfortable with that sort of preliminary lack of clarity. And as Walter said, our process is very open with respect to offering a spectrum of solutions at the onset. So we're very careful not to just come back to the table with, hey, here's the design that you asked for. I don't believe there's ever been an instance where we've done that. Certainly some programs are quite accelerated, and you can take something that might typically require 6 months of concepting and iteration. You can certainly condense that down to a few weeks. But nonetheless, you still have to go through the process, and it has to be collaborative, and you have to have an iterative feedback loop. So,
when it comes to those multiple solutions, what do you find structurally to help pull that off? Do you have different teams that are at Herbst Product pursuing different solutions, or do you purposely try to cross-pollinate the ideas across the teams? How do you structure that?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I mean, I think it's typically just the core project team. We want everyone to be really intimate with the program and the problem that they're working on. So, and again, that discovery and definition phase is really essential for our team to immerse themselves in the subject matter and really understand the problem and be empathetic from the viewpoint of the user, and then take those insights and that kind of emotional attachment to the project and then embed that into their subsequent design work. So we don't really silo the teams in that manner. I think it's more like, okay, the cohesive team together would come up with an initial brainstorming session might yield 30 ideas. And then we would quickly have to filter through those to get us down to a manageable set of solutions, maybe 8 to 10 would be a pretty typical kind of initial spectrum of ideas. And the point of developing that spectrum is to occupy different points on that continuum. So you may have some solutions that are what we call quite close in and sort of near-term solutions that are easy to execute. The organization can really envision how they might quickly deploy that and manufacture it and build it, and fits into their existing architecture quite well. And we'll have ideas that are well suited to that. And similarly, on the other end of the spectrum, we'll have some ideas that really make people think and make the internal team take a step back and sort of scratch their heads and say, boy, this is quite interesting. We've got to do some more diligence to really understand, like, What are the commercial implications of doing this? Does it satisfy our cost structure? Is it, it's a really innovative idea. What are the cost implications? So how do we automate this at high speed production? Or, I mean, there's a whole host of sort of like downstream considerations. So I think it's pretty neat the way we have it set up to give ourselves and our partners an opportunity to really like take a step back and say, okay, look, here's the potential spectrum of solutions. Now let's get really serious about evaluating the best paths. And I say that with plurality because you never want to take that initial 8 to 10 spectrum and commit to a certain direction. I think for us, it's like, look, here's the initial first pass. Now let's find 2 or 3 within this that feel like a pretty good mix of ideas. And then that sort of first or second phase of filtering down then becomes an opportunity for us to do some real deep dive into what are these 2 or 3 solutions. How do we then commit to the one idea that everyone feels checks the boxes and has the highest level of confidence? So
excellent. Okay, so really good. Which also suggests to me that you have people on the project team that just love exploring ideas and are good at not getting attached to any one and just pursuing each to see where we end up with this. So
Walter's always said, check your ego at the door. So we go out of our way not to get, as you said, too attached to our ideas. It's part of the process, and you have to be comfortable with knowing that 8 out of the 10 things that you sketch that day probably aren't going to make it to the next round.
Right.
So,
yeah.
The other thing we appreciate, Chad, and we may be alone in this, but I certainly hope not, for the good of the industry, if you will. It is so easy to initialize that low-hanging fruit, the obvious answer.
Right.
No, you better keep digging. And so the whole team has that mentality. I mean, it's not that Scott or Walter is just banging on them. It's just the reality. Let's just get rid of the low-hanging fruit. I know this is obvious. Now what do we do? Where do we really go after that? And everybody's mentality, I mean, the whole team thinks that way.
Yep, really good. So many more things we could talk about, but we've had a good discussion, and I am going to steer us towards one point that we love bringing up in our discussions is a innovation quote, and we really enjoy hearing about those. Walter, I know you prepared a couple. You're welcome to pick your favorite, or if you want to share both, go right ahead.
I am, and I actually have my book right in front of me because chapter 1 is understanding opportunities in end user research. And I had my dean at Northwestern, where I had been for some serious amount of time. And Julio Otino always said, there's no prize for solving correctly what proves to be the wrong problem. And I thought, boy, that is rock solid. And then I'm turning to chapter 6, where we talk about strategy and added design value. And a guy named Scot Herbst said the following: lasting products are built on a solid foundation. A strategic approach is your bedrock. And that is rock solid in that book. And I'm delighted to be able to use both of those.
I love both quotes. Your dean, there is no prize for solving correctly what proves to be the wrong problem. Man, does that tie in well with what we've talked about, right? Make sure we have a clear understanding of the problem. And lasting products are built on a solid foundation, a strategic approach. Your methodology is your bedrock. So thanks, Scott, for contributing that quote as well. Really a great pleasure talking with both of you about this. In terms of resources, people that want to reach out to find out more about your company, more about you, Walter, if you want more about your Northwestern program that you started there years ago, anything, what do you want to share with us now?
Well, you can find us at Herbst Product, Produkt. And then you'll get into our newsletter, and we're forever sending things out just to keep you current with what we're all doing. And then the program generally, it was really designed for mid-level folks in the design/innovation business. And it's generally a part-time, but you can do a full-time program at Northwestern. It's called Master of Product Design Development Management. So that's a combination of light MBA. I'll say that because we have to jam an awful lot into the program itself, and then advanced methodology, which is what Scott and I have been honing all of these years. So it's a combination of both of that right brain, if you will, and left brain thinking, and you walk away with a master's, either full-time 1-year program or part-time, and a 2-year designed for professionals.
Excellent. Good. And Scott, your headquarters in Silicon Valley area, specifically Santa Cruz, right?
Exactly. We're about an hour south of San Francisco in Santa Cruz. And yeah, as Walter said, please take a look at our work at herbstproduct.com, and feel free to follow us on social media. You can find us on LinkedIn or Instagram at Herbst Product, again, Herbst Product with a K. And yeah, please get in touch, shoot us a note, let us know if you have any questions or you'd like to connect. We're here.
Fantastic. Okay, and I'll make sure that the links to those resources, your website, the Northwestern program, Walter, your book, all those are in the show notes. And once again, gentlemen, really appreciate the opportunity to get to talk today.
Thank you. Thanks, Chad. Love doing it. Thank you.
And listeners listening, if you want to find the written version of everything we discussed and those links, simply go to productmasterynow.com/549. As always, keep innovating.
Thank you for listening to Product Mastery Now, where product leaders and managers gain product mastery through practical knowledge, influence, and confidence. By listening, you are becoming a product master, creating products customers love. Find additional resources at productmasterynow.com. Keep innovating.